2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fight Chat Friday. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about an exciting trend that has been taking place in Taekwondo Sparring recently. You may have noticed that the half-facing stance is making a little bit of a comeback, and in this episode, we're going to explore what's happening, why that's happening, and the benefits that this stance has. So, let's dive in.
So hey everyone, and welcome to episode 132 of Fight Chat Friday. So today we're going to be looking at the evolution of the various stances or facings that we've had in ITF Taekwondo. So the half facing and the side facing, and particularly looking at the side facing stance having been so popular for the last number of years that perhaps it's losing popularity a little bit, and we're seeing the side facing stance come back in and, make a claim for dominance once again. So jumping back to the historical context of this, once upon a time there was quite a strong battle between both styles. Inevitably they go in cycles. One becomes dominant and then the other one kind of evolves as an answer to the dominant fighters of the time. Here we have Julia Cross and Kreisha Lopez from Germany, with Julia taking a much more orthodox side-facing stance behind a strong side kick, and Kreisha looking for angles. And I think, Richie, as we look into this, really what we're talking about is the more one becomes popular, the more people need to look to find a solution and to evolve. Because if you copy what's already successful, you'll only ever be the poor imitation. Whereas if you innovate, iterate, and look to do something new, you have a chance of being the best at that.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, what we're looking at here is Paparazzo here in blue is more the half-facing stance. Bit more mobility, more angles, more circular shots, which is the natural solution for that sideline. Here we have the side facing stance again from Tapalatu, and what you see here is a big, strong psychic dominant position. Same with Barada, also very, very good with the psychic, obviously. And we've mentioned before we recorded here that some people were just so good at the psychic that still, even though people had solutions, they weren't really able to execute. So, like, if you are dominant with that side kick, it still is hard to beat. But that really came into the forefront then in the kind of later years where we had the kind of wacko influence with point fighting. So a lot of blitzing, and that quick side kick off the front leg was pretty much a dominant style of the last, I would say, maybe 10 years, Adrian. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. From about 2012, 2013 onwards, it definitely seemed to come to the forefront. And we started to see a generation of fighters that based that very, very explosive go stop kind of very clear scoring, and whether that was because of the increased likelihood of getting a foul for contact, or or it was just that was the natural evolution to what had been there before. So if a more circular or half facing style of fighting was popular, the front leg fencing side on style naturally evolves to kind of counter and solve that. So yeah, again, it goes in those iterative cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we have next?
Well, just a big thank you actually to all of the people who've been supporting us for the last couple of years as we've been doing this. As the YouTube channel has hit 12,000 subs, which is massive, and thank you so much to everybody for continuing to follow us along on this journey. Of course, we'll do a Q&A in the next short while, so if you have any questions you'd like us to tackle on that, please hit us up on any of the social media, our YouTube comments, of course, or Instagram or Facebook. Please hit those up and we'll be sure to get those into the next Q&A.
Yeah. So that brings us then moving forward again on this conversation about the side and half-facing stances. So recently we've seen some people being really dominant with the side-facing stance. We see Kira Fitzsimons here, who is a champion in her own right multiple times in blue. Very, very effective off that side-facing stance. Very strong with the side kick, able to change that up really well. And also still very effective with hands. Even though that she has the very side-facing stance, she's effective with the hands and she's able to turn that position to get the backhand involved. Usually this is a big issue, but here we see a nice battle between Martin Gaudet and Red, who has a very side-facing stance usually, until he gets the hands, that is. And then we see James here in blue, who has that little bit of that hybrid that we're talking about mostly with today's video as the inspiration, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing to talk about there is that, it's nice to put them into two neat categories, side facing and half facing. But as you look at them, it's not, there's not a huge difference in terms of how it looks. And very often it's the difference in terms of how it feels when you're in those stances and how naturally you can move from one shot to the other and the shots that are available. So turning that front foot sideways in particular and getting the body facing sideways often cuts off, we've spoken about this before, the backhand. It makes it really difficult to engage with the hands and get the backhand in. So you have to be quite conscious of what you need to do to do that. It also makes shots off the back leg a little bit easier to read. They become a bit more obvious and easier to see coming. Whereas if you have that little bit more half facing, the toes are at an angle, either somewhere forward towards the opponent rather than directly to the side. It makes it a little bit easier to disguise those back leg shots. And we have this hybrid chamber that becomes a thing off the front leg. Richie, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's like that. If left leg is in the lead here, for example, with James, it's like your front foot is facing 1 on the clock. And then it's not completely sideways to facing 3, which is the more side-facing side kick position. It allows you to use the side kick when necessary, but also mix it in with the hands becoming more effective, and the turning kicks are much more effective. And James in particular is very explosive with his turning kicks, and he's able to use that then much more effectively. So for me, one of the main kicks that you'll see here, so the side kick, there you see it. So he's able to use that, but the turning kicks over the blind side and the back leg turning kick, and there you go. Link up really well with spinning techniques. And then we see the side kick again. So he has that nice hybrid, a very modern half-facing stance, let's say, and then he's able to use hands very effectively when necessary also. So the kicks we're looking at here from this stance, you have your side kick, of course, but you have predominantly turning kicks, front leg, back leg, and spinning banded dolyochegi. And then we also have, of course, the hacks kick. So linking all these together, it's a lovely style that he's able to link together, get a nice flow here in this clip in particular, leading one to the other, head, body, and that's always a good way to go about it because your opponent isn't really sure what's happening, and then your hands are in a great position to be effective with those as well. So very, very nice, tidy style that we see, and really nice to watch as well.
Yeah, and I suppose what we're kind of suggesting with this is that, as one style becomes dominant, the other will usually emerge as, but it needs its champions, it needs its people who kind of popularize it, bring it forward and show how it's going to work in this, in this era. So the last time, let's say that there were, we had the side fighting stance dominant, the blitz wasn't a thing. So those in the half-facing stance didn't need to worry about or deal with a blitz, whereas now that's certainly a case. So the exact way of using that half-facing stance that was used, going back into the 2010s and that era, and before, it was different because the challenges that were presented were different. And so, now we're looking at thinking, okay, how do we look to the future and say, well, what opportunities does this half-facing stance afford us? And maybe there's still a point where they blend and we have a hybrid of the two, or the ability to flow from one to the other. So let's have a look at some examples, and Richie might talk through some of these.
Yeah, we've got two really high-level kickboxers here, Elijah Everill with the black helmet, and we have Finn with the red helmet. These guys are really, really high level, and here they're doing a little bit of sparring with point fighting. So you see that more side-facing stance. You can use your side kicks, a little bit more movement. The movement is different, as you notice, from the more half-facing position, but it's very much that blitz, that launch backhand, and very much speed-based in a straight linear line. Here then we have same again actually, but we see the use of a bit more of a hybrid. But we see here it's much more effective to use different variety of shots with the legs when they go into the light contact. So these guys are able to blend them well. Now you see here we go light contact sparring, and they looked as if their shots and range is way different, but these guys are able to be effective in both. Here you have, look at their front leg, their toes are facing forward almost, so their hands are effective. They can duck, they can weave, they can use the hands really well, but also use kicks like the side kick, the hacks, the turning kick, and a nice blend. So I think that the future and the people who are going to really be able to blend these together are going to be effective if you can have that side kick and have that straight line dominant style mixed in with that nice blend of using the hands and using the circular shots as well. So if you can mix the two of these, I think that's going to be the way forward in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and as always, it's an easier said than done kind of thing. So, you know, you're going to find something is natural to you. Maybe you learn to spar in one stance more than another and so on. But evolving that, learning how to make it suit you, and figuring out when the game stage or the tactical situation dictates, I'd be better off taking the other stance. You know, do I want to lead my opponent or react to what my opponent does? These are the decisions you want to be making.
Yeah, for sure. So there we go. That's this week's video. We will catch you in the next one, and make sure to get your questions in.
Best of luck. Bye now.